This power only authenticity can provide. Have you ever felt lonely, even when surrounded by people? Have you ever had that strange sensation that, no matter how crowded a place is, no one really knows you? It feels like there's an invisible wall between you and the world, a wall you built yourself. And the worst part, you don't even know exactly how it got there. Life is full of meetings and conversations, but how many of those connections are genuine? How many times have you truly shown who you are, without fear of judgment, without worrying about pleasing others? Maybe you also have that impression of wearing a mask. It's as if for every situation, there's a version of yourself that isn't entirely true. But why does this happen? Is it because we're afraid? Afraid of not being accepted, afraid to show who we are and discover that we're not enough. These masks we wear seem to protect us, but deep down, they isolate us. They distance us from real connections, those that make us feel alive, seen and loved for who we truly are. But let me tell you something, you're not alone in this. We've all felt this weight at some point. We've all hidden behind smiles that didn't represent how we were feeling. But you know what? This feeling of loneliness doesn't have to be permanent. The truth is, the deepest and most meaningful connections happen when we have the courage to tear down these walls, to take off these masks, even if it's gradually. Because only when we show who we are do we give people the chance to truly know us. So I invite you, look inward. Find the incredible person you really are, and little by little, give them the freedom to exist in the world, without barriers, without disguises, because the world doesn't need a version of you. The world needs you, for real. And here's the big question. If we feel this loneliness even when surrounded by people, maybe it's because we're living to meet expectations that aren't ours. Have you noticed how often we shape our words, our actions, and even our dreams, trying to please others? But does that really work? Is it worth carrying the burden of trying to be everything others expect of us? Now let's dive deep into this reflection, because maybe the root of so much frustration lies precisely there, in the effort to fit into molds that don't reflect who we are. 2. The pressure of social expectations. How many times have you found yourself doing something just because you thought it was expected? Maybe it was a comment you held back to avoid judgment, a path you chose because it seemed safer, or even an important decision you made to avoid disappointing someone. We live in a society where, from an early age, we're conditioned to please. Whether it's getting good grades in school, choosing a career that proudly represents us, or even pretending to be happy on social media, even when we're exhausted. It's as if we're in a play, acting out roles we didn't choose. And you know what the problem with all this is? The more we try to please, the further we drift from who we truly are. Every time we ignore our own desires to meet someone else's expectations, we lose a piece of our identity. And gradually, we start to feel disconnected. This disconnection is subtle, but powerful. You look in the mirror and feel like something's missing, as if you don't recognize the person you see, because deep down it's not you there, it's the version you created to fit the standards. But let me share a secret with you. You don't have to be everything others expect of you. You weren't born to please everyone, and that's okay. True freedom lies in finding the courage to say no to expectations that don't make sense to you. Yes, it can be scary at first. The idea of disappointing someone or appearing different is uncomfortable. But you know what's even scarier? Living an entire life trying to meet others' demands and never discovering who you truly are. So, take a deep breath. Allow yourself to question, what do I really want? What makes sense to me? And start, even if slowly, prioritizing your own voice. Because in the end, the expectations that truly matter are the ones you set for yourself. And it's curious how this pressure to meet social expectations creates something we all use, often without realizing it. Masks. No, they're not physical masks, but the ones we put on to hide who we are and try to be who we think others want. And even though they seem like a solution, do they really protect us? Let's explore that now. 3. The metaphor of masks. Think of a mask. On the outside, it can be beautiful, flashy, even perfect. But inside, it's just a piece of cold, rigid material that prevents your true face from showing. This is exactly how many people live. The masks we wear aren't made of fabric or plastic. They are built from fake smiles, carefully chosen words, and behaviors that don't represent who we truly are. They seem to protect us, creating a more acceptable version for the world, but in reality, they imprison us. Wearing a mask is exhausting. It requires constant effort to maintain appearances, to meet expectations, to never let the real me escape behind this facade. And you know what's saddest? The more we wear these masks, the more we lose connection with our essence. Have you ever stopped to think why we do this? Because deep down, we're afraid. Afraid that if we show who we are, we'll be rejected. Afraid that people won't like our true selves. So we create these versions of ourselves, perfect to please others, but completely disconnected from genuine happiness. But here's the truth. Masks can protect you, but they can't set you free. Because freedom is feeling comfortable in your own skin, without needing to hide anything. Happiness is knowing that you are accepted, not for what you appear to be, but for who you truly are. So maybe it's time to look at these masks and start taking them off. Maybe not all at once, but piece by piece. Whether it's being honest in a conversation, allowing yourself to say no when something doesn't make sense, or even admitting to yourself what you really feel. Because in the end, the life worth living isn't the one where you're perfect for everyone, but the one where you're true to yourself. And believe me, when you take off the masks, you'll discover that there are people who not only accept but admire what's behind them, your authentic self. And as we remove these masks, an inevitable question arises: who are we really? It's a deep thought, isn't it? Because often we get so used to living behind these masks that we even forget who we truly are. This is where philosophy can help us understand a little more about our quest for authenticity. 4. Philosophical reflection on authenticity. The idea of authenticity isn't new. Philosophers like Sartre and Nietzsche dedicated their lives to reflecting on what it means to be true to oneself. For Sartre, life is like a play. We put ourselves in roles, shaping our actions based on what we believe others expect from us. It's what he called bad faith, the act of deceiving ourselves, pretending to be something we're not, just to fit in. And what's the result of that? Sartre said that the more we live to meet others' expectations, the further we drift from who we truly are. It's the paradox of authenticity. The more we try to please, the emptier we feel. Nietzsche, on the other hand, brings an even more provocative concept. He spoke about becoming who you are. For him, being authentic isn't just about knowing who you are today, but accepting that we're in a constant state of transformation. It's as if authenticity is an ongoing process of discovery, of freeing ourselves from external pressures and aligning with our inner truth. But why is this so difficult? Because deep down, we all seek security, and society offers us that security, but at a cost, the cost of our essence. When we follow standards and fit into molds, we feel less fear, but also less freedom. And here's the central point. Authenticity isn't about pleasing others. It's about finding yourself. It's having the courage to question expectations, to reject roles that don't resonate with our truth, and to embrace the journey, sometimes challenging but always liberating, of being who we are. So I invite you to reflect. What roles have you been playing that don't reflect your essence? What have you been doing just to please others? Because the more you connect with your truth, the closer you get to living a genuine and fulfilling life. After all, as Nietzsche reminds us, the path to authenticity is a process. It's not something we find all at once, but something we build day by day, allowing ourselves to be more true to ourselves. And the beauty of it? Every step is worth it. And when we begin to free ourselves from the roles and masks we've accumulated, we realize something important. Authenticity isn't a final destination. It's not something you simply find and keep forever. In fact, it's a journey, a continuous process full of ups and downs, but one that transforms the way we live. 5. The process of discovering authenticity. Imagine authenticity as a path under constant construction. It's not a straight, perfect line, but filled with curves, obstacles, and moments of doubt. Being authentic isn't about finding an ideal version of yourself and getting stuck in it. It's about allowing yourself to evolve, change, grow, all while staying true to your essence. This process starts with a simple yet powerful question. Who am I, really? Not who you think you should be or who others expect you to be, but who you are. And the answer to that doesn't come from outside. It's within you, waiting to be heard. The journey to authenticity can be challenging because it requires courage. Courage to confront your insecurities, to question the narratives you've always believed, and to accept that being true to yourself won't always be comfortable. It might be uncomfortable to say no to something that doesn't make sense to you, or to admit that your past choices didn't reflect who you truly were. But that's where the beauty of this process lies. Every small step toward your truth is a victory. Every time you choose to be honest with yourself, accept your imperfections, or allow yourself to follow what truly matters to you, you get closer to your authenticity. And you know what the reward is. It's the lightness of living in alignment with who you are. It's the peace of no longer having to pretend, the joy of feeling connected to your essence. Because authenticity isn't about being perfect, it's about being real. So I challenge you to start this journey today. Look inward, ask yourself what truly matters to you, and take the first step, even if it's small. Because in the end, authenticity isn't something we find from the outside in. It's something we build from the inside out, one day at a time, one choice at a time. And believe me, it's worth it. And as you begin to walk this path of self-discovery, an inevitable question arises. How do you show the world who you really are? After all, living authentically often means facing the fear of being rejected. It's a challenge that requires courage, but it's also one of the most liberating acts you can undertake. 6. The courage to show who you really are. Showing who you truly are can be scary. The idea of taking off your masks and letting the world see your essence can bring up a series of fears. What if they don't like me? What if I'm not enough? What if they judge me? But here's the truth. Not everyone will like you, and that's okay. It's a fact of life, but it doesn't define your worth. What really matters isn't how many people accept you, but that you have the courage to accept yourself first. This personal acceptance is the foundation of emotional freedom. When you understand that you don't need others' validation to be who you are, something magical happens. You stop living to please. You start making choices that resonate with your values, your passions, your truth. This doesn't mean it will always be easy. There will be moments of doubt, discomfort, and perhaps even rejection. But every time you choose to be honest with yourself, allow yourself to be vulnerable, you become stronger. Because the courage to be who you are doesn't come from the absence of fear, but from the decision to move forward despite it. And you know what's incredible? When you show up authentically, you attract the right people into your life. People who see, accept, and value the real you. And more importantly, you give yourself permission to live more lightly, without the burden of trying to be someone you're not. So ask yourself, what's stopping you from being yourself? What fears or expectations are you still carrying? Maybe it's time to let them go, to break free from those invisible chains and allow yourself to live authentically. Because in the end, happiness isn't about being accepted by everyone, but about fully accepting yourself. And when you do that, you discover that being who you really are isn't just an act of courage, it's an act of self-love. And when you find the courage to be your true self, something amazing starts to happen. That heavy feeling that seemed to follow you begins to disappear, and in its place emerges something much more powerful: true happiness. But what does this have to do with authenticity? Everything. Let's talk about that now. 7. The relationship between authenticity and happiness. Have you noticed how, when you're being yourself, everything feels lighter? It's no coincidence. Genuine happiness doesn't come from following patterns or pleasing others. It comes from living in alignment with who you truly are. Being authentic means respecting your values, following your own dreams, and being honest about what you feel. And when you do that, you create a state of inner peace. It's like you no longer need to fight against yourself, as if finally you're in the right place, being exactly who you're meant to be. On the other hand, trying to please everyone is a lost battle. You can never be everything to everyone. And while chasing that external validation, you lose time and energy that you could invest in yourself. In the end, pleasing others might bring momentary satisfaction, but living according to your truth brings lasting happiness. Authenticity liberates you because it eliminates the need for constant approval. You stop depending on what others think and start valuing what you think. This creates a sense of freedom that no external validation can offer. And the most beautiful thing is that the more authentic you are, the more you inspire others to be too. Your happiness, born from that genuine connection with your essence, becomes contagious. You begin to live with purpose, with joy, and it reflects in everything around you. So if you've been seeking happiness, maybe the answer isn't something external. Maybe it's inside you, waiting to be discovered, waiting for you to allow yourself to live life in a more truthful way. Because in the end, being authentic isn't just a path to happiness, it is the very act of being happy. But of course, life doesn't happen in a bubble. We live in society, surrounded by people, cultures, and expectations that in some way influence our choices. So, how do you balance the need to adapt with the desire to stay true to yourself? That's the question we're going to explore now. 8. Balancing social adaptation and staying true to yourself. Being authentic doesn't mean ignoring the world around you or living in isolation within your own truths. After all, we're social beings, and coexistence requires a certain degree of adaptation. Whether at work, with family, or within friendship circles, there are times when we need to give in, adjust, or collaborate for things to flow smoothly. But how far is that healthy? The problem begins when this adaptation starts to compromise your values, your dreams, or your essence. It's like in trying to fit in, you lose yourself, and that loss, though subtle at first, can disconnect you from who you really are. The secret lies in finding balance. It's not about choosing between pleasing others or being true to yourself. It's about making conscious adjustments that respect your needs and boundaries. It's about saying yes to what makes sense and no to what contradicts your principles, even if that means facing temporary discomforts. Small acts of authenticity in daily life can make all the difference. It might be the courage to express your opinion in a meeting, even if it's contrary to the majority. Or the simple act of choosing a different path, even if everyone expects something else from you. Each authentic choice strengthens your connection with yourself, making it easier to balance external and internal demands. And remember, being flexible is important, but not at the expense of your truth. It's possible to contribute, collaborate, and connect without giving up who you are. The key is to stay anchored in your values while navigating the waters of social coexistence. Because in the end, living in society shouldn't mean losing yourself. On the contrary, it's an opportunity to share the best of you, your essence, your authenticity with the world around you. And when you find that balance, you discover that it's possible to be part of something bigger without ceasing to be genuinely you.